Hey there, Trailblazers! Honkai Star Rail has come a long way since launch, hasn't it? Remember when Imaginary was the underdog combat type with just one lonely unit, Welt, holding the fort? Fast forward a few updates, and bam, Imaginary is now packed with characters. And not just any characters, but some of the most OP ones in the game. Seriously, the devs went from barely there to, oh wow, calm down with this path. And with the version 2.6 update dropping Rappa, we officially have an Imaginary character for every single path in the game. That's right, every single one. But hey, let's be real. Just because we've got the whole squad doesn't mean they're all worth your precious resources, right? If you're aiming for the endgame, and let's face it, who isn't, you'll want to focus on the cream of the crop. So in today's video, we're diving into the best Imaginary characters to invest in, who will absolutely dominate the battlefield, and who might just look pretty in your collection. Grab your coffee, get comfy, and let's break it down. I'm quickly moving on to the video. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching. Let's talk about Yukong, one of the Harmony characters in Honkai Star Rail. When she first joined the roster, Yukong was like a breath of fresh air for players looking to boost their team's damage. Back then, there weren't many support characters available, so her ability to buff her teammates' ATK, crit rate, and crit DMG made her a go-to choice. But as more 5-star supports entered the scene, Yukong's spotlight started to dim pretty quickly. And let's be honest, she's a bit high maintenance when it comes to team building. Here's the thing with Yukong, her entire playstyle revolves around using her skill every single turn. This keeps your team's ATK buffed for 2 turns, which sounds great until you realize how quickly this eats through her skill points. Plus, to maximize her potential, you need to time her ultimate perfectly to add those extra crit buffs. It's like managing a full-time job just to keep her buffs rolling. While this can work wonders if you've got follow-up attack characters like Clara or Jing Yuan, there are definitely easier options out there now that the roster has expanded. So, is Yukong still worth using? Well, she's not bad, especially if you enjoy setting up big plays with follow-up attacks. But in the current meta, where 5-star supports like Bronya and Luocha offer more utility with less hassle, Yukong feels a bit like an old flame you've outgrown. She's got her charm, but the resource investment to keep her optimized can feel like more trouble than it's worth. If you're a fan of Imaginary characters or love her design, go for it, but don't feel bad about benching her for a more versatile option. Alright, let's talk about Welt, one of the OG 5-star characters in Honkai Star Rail. If you've been around since launch, you probably know him as the guy who carried the Imaginary banner all by himself for a while. Back then, if you wanted someone to mess with enemy turns, Welt was your guy. His whole shtick is about slowing enemies down with his attacks, and if you're lucky, he can even make them take extra damage. Sounds pretty solid, right? Well, hold on to that thought. Here's the thing about Welt. He's like that friend who's good at everything, but never really great at one thing. He tries to support the team, but he's not out here keeping everyone alive or boosting your damage like a pro. And when it comes to dealing damage himself, it's decent, but nothing to write home about. If you're chasing meta teams, you might find Welt a little underwhelming. He doesn't quite hit the must-have mark as a sub-DPS or support in the current lineup. That said, he's not useless, especially if your roster is on the thinner side. Early on, Welt can add some extra damage and utility to your team while you're figuring things out. Plus, slowing enemies is always handy when you're trying to keep control of the battlefield. He's not a top-tier pick anymore, but hey, if you've got him and not much else, he's definitely worth a spot in your party. Just don't expect him to carry the whole team on his back. Let's talk about one of the coolest Imaginary characters in Honkai Star Rail, March 7th. Yep, she's finally rocking her own Imaginary type. If you're a fan of follow-up attacks and F2P friendly units, this one's a total win. You can snag March 7th and all her Eidolons for free, yes, free, just by diving into the Xianzhou Luofu continuation quest and event. That's right, no warping, no stellar jades, just a fun little questline to unlock her full potential. March 7th is a support unit with a unique twist. Her skill lets her assign a Shifu. Basically, the Shifu is the main DPS of your party, and it comes with some great perks. She can target enemies who are weak to the Shifu's combat type, dealing some solid toughness damage. It's like she's tagging along with your DPS, making sure those shields go down faster. Plus, she isn't just there for moral support. Her damage is surprisingly decent for a support character. Now, let's talk Eidolons. These upgrades make her even better at her job. They provide buffs for both March 7th and the Shifu, adding extra utility and damage potential to your team. If you've been looking for an Imaginary character who can do more than just poke at enemies, March 7th is a fantastic pick. She's easy to get, effective in combat, and brings something fresh to the Astral Express lineup. So, if you haven't unlocked her yet, what are you waiting for? Time to hop into the quest and bring her on board. Let's talk about one of the standout characters in Honkai, Star Rail, Dr. Radio. If you were playing back during the version 1.6 update, you probably remember him as the first limited 5-star character everyone could get for free. That's right, no gacha, no RNG heartbreak, just a solid addition to your team. Dr. Radio specializes in single-target follow-up attacks, and he gets his moment to shine every time he uses his skill or ultimate. It's satisfying to watch him stack up those extra hits like he's showing off in style. But here's the catch. Dr. Ratio needs a lot of setup to be at his best. He thrives when enemies are covered in debuffs, and that means you'll need to bring along teammates who can keep those status effects rolling. On top of that, he's best suited for focusing down one enemy at a time. While that's great for tough boss fights, it's not ideal in today's AoE heavy meta. Let's face it, when you've got waves of enemies rushing you in Memory of Chaos, it's hard not to wish for someone with a bit more splash damage. That being said, don't sleep on Dr. Ratio. He's a niche pick, sure, but he's still fantastic in the right situations. Memory of Chaos, for example, is a playground where he can really shine, especially against bosses or tanky elites. If you're willing to build your team around him and put in the effort to stack those debuffs, he's absolutely worth using. Plus, there's just something undeniably cool about pulling off those slick follow-up attacks, reminding everyone why Dr. Radio was the star of version 1.6. Alright, let's talk about one of the most iconic imaginary characters in Honkai, Star Rail, Dan Heng, Imbibitor Lunae. When this guy first dropped, he was a complete game changer. His sheer power spike made everyone else feel like background characters for a hot minute. Sure, the meta shifted as newer, shinier units entered the scene, but Dan Heng still holds his ground as one of the best main DPS options in the game. If you're building a team around him, you're making a smart move. What makes Dan Heng stand out isn't just his raw damage, it's how self-sufficient he is. This guy can stack buffs on himself like he's prepping for a boss raid. Increased DMG, boosted crit DMG, you name it. And if you pair him with supports like Sparkle or Tingyun, oh man, you're in for a treat. These two are basically his hype squad, turning his already impressive damage output into an absolute spectacle. With the right setup, you can easily see numbers north of 200,000 damage every turn. That's not just a big number, it's a statement. But let's be real, managing Dan Heng's abilities well is the key to unlocking his potential. He's not a set-it-and-forget-it kind of character. You need to pay attention to his rotations and know when to go all in. That's part of the fun, though. Watching him unleash those massive hits turn after turn is incredibly satisfying. So if you've been on the fence about investing in him, just do it. The guy's a beast, and even in a crowded roster of powerhouse units, he's got that timeless flair that makes him worth the effort. Alright, let's talk about one of the standout imaginary characters in Honkai, Star Rail, Luocha. If you've been running endgame content or even just trying to survive some of the tougher fights, you already know how valuable healers are. And Luocha, he's not just good, he's a game changer. This guy doesn't just heal, he's practically a walking hospital. His skill lets you heal an ally and bonus points removes debuffs. And not just any debuff, it prioritizes those annoying crowd control ones that can ruin your day. Ever been frozen or stunned at the worst possible time? Luocha's got you covered. But here's the best part. His skill isn't just something you manually use, it's like it has a mind of its own. Every 2 turns, if one of your party members drops below 50% HP, boom, instant heal. You don't have to lift a finger. And let's talk about his healing field. Every time your characters attack enemies within it, they get healed. It's like having a passive safety net, keeping your team in the fight longer and hitting harder. He makes battles feel so much more manageable, even when things get hectic. So, if you're building a team and wondering if Luocha is worth it, the answer is a resounding yes. He doesn't just fill the role of a sustainer, he dominates it. Whether you're climbing the simulated universe or tackling the Memory of Chaos, Luocha is the guy you want watching your back. He's not just a healer, he's your team's lifeline. Let's talk about one of the coolest imaginary characters in Honkai, Star Rail, Rappa. Now, if you've been following the Erudition path, you might know it hasn't always been the most exciting. But Rappa, she's here to shake things up in a big way. What makes her stand out is her ability to shred through enemy toughness like it's nothing, as long as they're weak to imaginary damage, of course. She's basically the queen of breaking shields, and once she's done, she follows up with some serious damage to clean house. One thing I absolutely love about Rappa is how beginner-friendly she feels. You don't have to stress about squeezing out those perfect crit stats for her, just focus on boosting her break effect and she's good to go. But let's be real, getting those ideal artifact rolls can be a nightmare. Still, it's worth it because the payoff is huge. Plus, you get one of her best supports for free. Talk about value, right? Building her feels like assembling a cheat code for imaginary damage teams. So, if you're diving into the world of all imaginary characters, Rappa is a no-brainer. She's not just about big damage, she's about making life easier for your entire squad. Whether you're a pro min-maxer or just here for some fun, Rappa's got your back with her straightforward yet impactful playstyle. Trust me, once you see her in action, you'll wonder how you ever played without her. Alright, let's talk about one of the absolute best support characters you can snag in Honkai Star Rail, the Harmony Trailblazer. If you're running a break-based DPS team, this unit is a game changer. You'll pick them up naturally during the Penacony arc, but here's a little secret. If you're new and eager to get started, you can unlock them early through the event section. Trust me, this is one character you don't want to miss. They're like finding a pot of gold in a sea of Trailblazers. Now, what makes Harmony Trailblazer so special? It's all about their ultimate. When you pop it, every single party member gets to dish out Super Break DMG on a weakness-broken enemy. Yes, everybody. Even that one character you've been dragging along just because they look cool can suddenly feel like a breakmaster. This ultimate turns your team into a wrecking crew, shredding enemy weaknesses like confetti at a parade. And it's not just support. They've got some respectable toughness DMG themselves, so they're no slouch in battle either. The beauty of Harmony Trailblazer is their flexibility. You don't need a hyper-optimized, break-focused squad to make them shine. Got a mix of characters that you love but don't quite synergize perfectly? Throw Harmony Trailblazer into the mix and they'll bridge the gap like a pro. Whether you're just starting out or a seasoned player looking to fine-tune your lineup, this unit brings so much value to the table. So, if you haven't given them a shot yet, what are you waiting for? Dive into Penacony or check out that event section and get them on your team ASAP. When it comes to survivability in Honkai Star Rail, few characters can do it quite like Aventurine. He's got this fantastic ability to protect the entire team by giving them tanky shields. It's not just about healing up damage after it happens, it's about preventing that damage from ever being an issue in the first place. That's why Aventurine stands out so much. He's all about defense, ensuring your team can keep moving forward without worrying about taking a hit. But that's not all. Aventurine has some sneaky tricks up his sleeve. His ultimate ability allows him to increase the crit DMG taken by a specific enemy, making them much more vulnerable to your team's attacks. It's a clever way to help maximize your damage output while keeping your allies safe. And when you pair him with characters like Robin, things get even better. Thanks to Aventurine's follow-up abilities, Robin can boost her energy even faster, giving her more chances to unleash her own powerful moves. Talk about synergy! Aventurine isn't just about defense. He's about creating opportunities for offense too. His support role isn't limited to keeping everyone alive. It extends into making sure your team's offensive abilities get that extra boost when it matters most. So, whether you're focused on staving off damage or capitalizing on enemy weaknesses, Aventurine's the kind of ally you'll always want on your side. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.